Welcome back to some more book reviews. Today I want to follow up my last video on the Blue Sword with The Hero and the Crown, which is a sequel to the Blue Sword. And I'll say right off the bat, I enjoyed this one so much more than the first one. Not that the first one was bad at all. I just enjoyed this one more because it had more of the elements that I like. Also, in this one, we have dragons. So let's get into it. The plot summary, okay? Once again, we're set in the mythical land of Damar. Hope I'm saying that right. And this time, our story revolves around Erin, the king's only daughter. And she, sort of like Harry in the first one, is born with this natural gift of curiosity. However, she is a little bit, I don't want to say bullied, but it's sort of a struggle for her. She's not just born into royalty and then handed everything. Her problem is her background. It's the history surrounding her mother. There's a mystery there. And also there's a problem because of her lack of magical abilities, which in this one are more important in the circles of royalty, shall we say. They're more of a sign as to who's who and whatever. And mostly the higher up people have magical abilities. So if you don't, they consider you a normal person. And I know it sounds like one of those, oh, everybody's special but me, or I'm different than everybody else. But it's not like that, okay? It's not one of those annoying stories. And determined to prove herself, Erin embarks on a really dangerous quest that I could almost say foolish. Sort of like Harry, though, in the first one, Erin tries to involve herself in problems that don't really concern her, but she just happens to overhear, like at the breakfast table. You got all these guys sitting around talking military war stuff, and she's like asking questions about it, and they're kind of ragging on her for that. It's kind of funny because there was like 3 people at the table, and they all had a different response to her being interested. And I think this scene is one of the most important themes around the book about how, women are viewed in that kind of time frame. One person thinks it's hilarious that she would even consider such a thing. Another one is quietly sympathetic with her and kind of tries to side with her, but then it's revealed that, he has a crush on her. So that's probably the only reason that he's actually siding with her. And then there's her dad, the king, who just wants to protect her. And don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those extreme, women people, but being one, it's hard not to have overlooked that, because I think every woman experiences this kind of treatment. So basically, their biggest problem right now, you can forget all that political stuff. Their biggest problem right now is that each little village are being constantly ravaged by dragons. And I don't mean the big dragons. These dragons are like the small baby versions. I want to say no higher than your knees, like ankle biter dragons. And they keep showing up like being pests and eating animals and, breathing fire, and the people are complaining about it. So that's what I really love about this book. I don't care how shallow of me it is. The first one was all about assimilating into a new culture and, combining 2 people. But this one is about dragons. There's an interesting dynamic in the castle grounds. In this one, we have the royal court drama. Erin is seen as an outcast. So, kind of like Harry, Erin is on the other side of people being afraid of other cultures, of people they don't know. She has an interesting background because her father married a woman that was considered to be like an enemy of their people. And some people would make fun of her, called her a witch, said they seduced him. She gets berated by that a lot and constantly reminded that she doesn't fit in there with everybody else. But her goal, let's say mini goal, okay? Her goal is to learn how to fight and to have a sword. And I relate. So what I do love about Erin is that she doesn't just sit around and mope about it. Like if something's stupid, she actually does something. When she wants to do it, she does it. And even though that leads to a lot of mistakes, you don't really regret having experiences, do you? I mean, you can really look back on any experience you've had, whether it's good or bad, and there's always something you've learned from it. I don't know if anybody really wishes that something didn't happen, because it's an important part of learning and growing. And again, we have the magic of Kalar making a comeback in this book. So, in the kingdom of Damar, certain individuals possess magical abilities. And these abilities are often tied to their bloodline and their heritage. Members of the royal family, as I said before, are in particular known for the magical power. Some can heal, some can communicate with animals. Everybody's different according to like what affinity they have or need. And that's one of the main identifying traits to identify someone of noble blood is if they have these magical abilities. And since she doesn't really just have these magical abilities that she's born with, she actually goes out of her way. This might be a spoiler, but Erin isn't really born with these magical abilities. And in a way, this helps her because she has to actually do everything on her own. It's not just handed to her, like her family. And she soon learns about this magical ointment in like a forgotten lost book that nobody's really figured out how to translate or do right or something like that. But she's reading it, and there's a magical ointment for fireproof. And this is how she actually starts her journey. She's not quite confident enough to just go out and start slaying dragons. She doesn't have the training. She's not in the military like everybody else. She's not one of those guys who just grew up fighting each other. She actually takes her time. She reads, she learns, and she studies these fables all about these fireproof ornament and like history and the legends of experiences of other people. And I love that she doesn't get it just right off the bat. She has a long time of these trial and errors of just trying over and over again. I want to say it takes at least a year, but I don't really remember for sure. But it takes her a long time before she can actually even start to see some kind of progress. And I can't imagine working so hard on something and not seeing any progress for this whole time. And I like that it's sort of blending this science and magic. It's more like alchemy. And of course, she's never going to compare it to some guy who can pick up a 20-pound sword and just swing it away, okay? Women, they have to act different. They have to think differently because they're not as strong. And when you're not as strong, you have to be smarter. So this allows her to fight in a non-conventional way, which is kind of really cool. Something else we need to talk about here is the complexity of relationships in this book. I find them more interesting than in the first one. Like in the first one, Harry only had maybe 2 whole connections for the whole book, that were there the whole time. I want to start by mentioning her and this horse, Talat, or Talat, let's say Talat. So very early on, her father has this old horse that was wounded in battle. And instead of putting him down, they actually let him roam around outside and just sort of have a pen and just, work the day away. Erin gets this deep connection to him. She visits him every day and she talks to him, and he seems to understand. Well, not really understand, but he can understand that she's trying to communicate with him. And she recognizes his ability not to give up. He keeps pushing through his pain and his wound and his pride in order to be who he used to be. And I think she sees a little bit of herself in this horse because as the horse gradually gets better, she gradually gets stronger also. And I think it inspires her to push harder and to persevere because if he could do it, then she can do it. Talat is by her side for like the whole book, and it's really nice to watch his recovery, especially when we know the fate of most horses is that they don't get to. Another one of my favorite relationships is her and her cousin, TOR. Yes, it's her cousin, but it's a different time, and it's also her like love interest, but like also not really. You can tell like right off the bat, he's super friendly with her, but she sees it as like sympathizing because she's just a girl. And I like the fact that he says, hey, you want to learn? I'll get you a sword and I'll teach you how to do it. Because he's just like, that's what you want to do, then you can do it. They grew up together as friends, and everyone around them could see that he has a crush on her, except for her, apparently. Like, it's super obvious. And she has almost no interest in romance. Even her father just kind of accepts it. And there are some moments when I feel really bad for him because he seems like a genuinely good guy. And he keeps trying to get closer to her by helping and just being there for her. And she never really notices how much he's there for her. And I feel bad for him because you can only be told no so many times. But she has no interest in relationships. She wants to go slay dragons. There's also some moments that show connections with like her family members, like another one, Galana, I don't know how you say it. She's grown up with her, and she's kind of like the school town bully in their home. She wants everything. She's very spoiled, and it's even hinted, I think, that her ability is that she has like the ability to influence people, but I don't think it works on other people who have these abilities. I don't know. but she only cares about making the best marriage. Which is funny because she ends up having to settle anyway, and it's like they're kind of jealous about it. Yeah, they get super jealous when they notice all the attention that Erin gets because she's just like naturally beautiful with this red hair, and they are just pushed kind of aside. And I think it's useful because she shows the traditional values of women versus Erin, who is more focused on self-identity and, you know, trying to find out who she is. Now, let's get to the dragon. Maur is the primary antagonist of this story. Like, he is the embodiment of chaos and destruction. And it's sort of unbelievable when they first start talking about him because it's almost like a horror story. They're so used to seeing all these little baby dragons running around. And they're all, you know, so confident and cocky because they're like, oh yeah, I kill dragons all the time. But no one's actually prepared. No one's prepared for an actual dragon to show up. And there's this scene of her approaching the lair. And it's insanely intense. You know, it's dark and it's huge, it's vast, and it's filled with all these treasures of the people who previously came and the remnants of like all these past victims. I don't want to be too spoilery about it, but I will say that this has one of the most realistic and horrifying best scenes of fighting a dragon in any fantasy book ever. I remember this one scene in particular because of the dragon fire. I'm going to spoil a big thing here, so be prepared for that. So Erin's got this fireproof ointment, right? And I don't want to say she's getting like cocky, but she knows it can't hurt her, and she's tested it several times fighting the little ones. So she has all this confidence when she goes to tackle Maur, but what she isn't prepared for is when the dragon fire comes inside. She opens her mouth to scream at one point, and the fire comes inside. She can feel it burning her lungs, like filling her up, and then it even burns off her long, pretty hair. And it is both the most horrifying and intense thing ever. And like this whole scene is the whole reason I've declared this like the best dragon fighting scene I've ever seen. The thought of dragon fire getting inside and like burning you up that way. And then afterwards, she has this long lasting effect. It's a cough and a hoarseness of breath because it scorched her throat. And I just love how realistic that is. Because most of the battles, it's like, oh, you know, there's fire and the protagonist dodges or runs and hides behind something. But no, how often do you see it when somebody takes the fire just full on? Because normally the character would just die. But it's because of this fireproof ointment that we'd have allowed to see that image of somebody taking the fire. And then just imagining, you know, all your hair gone. And this changes her as a person. Because that used to be a huge compliment. Imagine, I know people make fun and say like, oh, well, you're being vain or whatever, but can you imagine your identity just like being taken from you, your hair being cut off against your will? And no, I mean, that's dishonor as far back as you can imagine. Think back to like when they used to do it to samurais. Another thing we have is that she takes the head back with her as proof. Because of course you need a trophy, right? And really, she's embarrassed by this, but everybody else wants to hang it on the wall. Kind of like hanging a picture up on a fridge, you know, oh, look, she killed the dragon. And they celebrate. But she's not the same as she was when the story started. You could pretty much call this scene a rebirth. Like, actually, rebirth. She's different now. She cares less about the celebration and this glory that she wanted now that she finally has it. And these people keep coming to check on her, but all she cares about really is healing and sleeping some more. You know, and I feel like there's a lot of trauma in this because she can't stop thinking about it. And it's like she's haunted by it almost. So afterwards, I'd say that battle was the climax of the book for me. That was almost directly halfway. Since that scene was so good, I feel like the rest of the book couldn't really follow that. And it's almost everything after that that I have issues with. Like, the book just sort of 180'd on me, and my opinion kind of changed completely. I went from enjoying the heck out of this book to enjoying almost none of it. It's sort of like things just happen after the fun part, and it's like, okay, well, we wrote the fun part, so now we have to end it, just do something. In a way, I don't really care, because I like the dragon part, and everything that came after it was cool, but I don't really care what would have happened no matter what it was. And let me tell you my main part of this book. Even though this is like a fantasy book and it's all about the dragons and the journey and the character growth, it's actually the romance and the relationship that bothered me the most. Because we have this nice character, this guy who you think is going to, they're going to end up together or whatever. It'll be cool, or they won't. Aaron just kind of ignores it, right? And instead, she gets pulled out of a dream by this random guy. Like, I kid you not. And yes, it's somebody from the first book. And I don't know what they're doing in this book. Not to mention, they're like significantly older. I'm not entirely sure, but again, it's another trend like the first one. Not an important part, but a side note. And she just sort of gets up out of her sleep and follows this guy's voice off to a tower. Follows this wizard guy off to a tower because he called to her intimately while she's sleeping. Somebody she's never known before. And then from here, it's almost like they start a whole new plot point. They go into this spray of like family drama, this history, this lore, this background, this magic, these like fights between family members. I don't even know. And then there's time travel. And in the part I hate the most, Aaron and this guy get together. Like, not just, oh, they're talking and they're giggling and they're braiding hair. No, like they fucking sleep together, pillow talk, then go on about their romantic destined future together. What? Poor Tor. Like, seriously, what the? Then she just decided, well, hey, I kind of gotta go back now. I can't really stay here doing nothing in time. And he's just like, oh yeah, well, you're immortal now. What? Didn't she decide straight up, like, I kid you not, that she can go and marry Tor now, but because of being immortal, she's gonna outlive him anyway. Then she can go back to this guy after he's dead. Like, what? I think, this is me trying to play devil's advocate here, that it's trying to show her being independent, making her own decisions, not just doing, picking somebody because they said they like you, whatever. But I highly disapprove. I wish everything after Mal was gone. There's something else about the special crown and the gym and whatever. Just, if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it, especially if you like stories about dragons. Did I mention that yet? So if you like The Hero and the Crown, please let me know, and your thoughts and opinions on it if you feel the same way I do, because I feel like Tor was shafted a little. So that's all I've got for this one. Happy reading, and take care of yourselves.